Hello and welcome to another episode of Those Two I Am Guys. I'm James Kennedy and I'm here with my co-host. But before I go any further, I want to publicly apologise for the lack of content coming from me and Tony recently. But we had COVID, still getting over COVID. So if there's some sniffles and coughs during the call, please accept our apologies in advance. All right, Tony, how are you feeling?
About the same as you, James, I think.
Average at best.
Average at best, both on the road to recovery, basically. But yeah, just to reiterate what James said, apologies, guys, for no content for a couple of weeks, but we have been very sick, unfortunately. But yeah, as I say, pleased to say we're on the road to recovery, aren't we?
Having said that, Tony, we do have something that's made that wait all the worthwhile, haven't we? Because we'll get something.
We certainly do, yeah, because very pleased to say that we've got one of our favourite vendors back on the show to tell us about his new products. So let's welcome Steve Mellor. Hi, Steve.
Hello. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, great to have you here again. And yeah, you're going to tell us all about your new product, aren't you? Podcast Advantage, I believe it is.
That's right. Yeah. It's how to go from having absolutely nothing to having a professionally produced and launched podcast in as little time as possible.
Yeah, I mean, podcast, Steve, especially the last year or so, it's been that buzzword, hasn't it, that everyone hears, but they're not quite sure what a podcast is sometimes.
I've seen so many times this year that people have said 2022, it's the year of the podcast. And looking at the figures, it kind of feels like it is, because way back when, before COVID, before the apocalypse, there were about 1.5 million podcasts.
Yeah.
Now there are about 2 million podcasts.
Wow.
So it's grown by a substantial amount over a couple of years, and people, it's not like it's dropped off. People are still going back to these podcasts again.
Yep.
But at the same time, this is still such an underserved market, because, there are, 50 million YouTube channels, 500 million blogs. I'm not just pulling those numbers out of the air. They do roughly what I found when I looked into, what people were saying about it. So you can compete against all of those other blogs. You can compete against all of those other YouTube channels, or for a fraction of the cost of doing YouTube, because you don't need a camera. You don't need to be on camera. That's a big thing that, people struggle with. You just need a microphone and a bit of recording software. And I tell you in the course how to get a bit of recording software that you don't need to pay. It's a paid for tool, but you don't need to pay for it until you're ready. And when you do pay for it, it's like $60.
Wow.
So it's nothing.
Yeah. It's not going to break the bank. Yeah.
It's not going to break the bank. And that is everything that you need to put a podcast online.
Yeah. Guys, I was going to say there as well, for those of you that have not seen our previous podcast, or should I say listened to our podcast or seen our YouTube video with Steve brought out another course called Webcam Advantage, and it changed the game. There's nobody put out content like this before. And the reason I'm saying this just now, Steve, is because the only course that I've seen similar to your course on the Podcast Advantage is a guy called JLD, Johnny Lee Dumas.
Right.
That's Entrepreneur on Fire. And his podcast software training course is thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, is it worth the money? Absolutely, it's worth the money. But when you see what you're giving us and I know the figures already, and we'll talk about that later, but it's just mind-blowing, because the depth that you went into, not to mention obviously how cutting edge your training is, it's just blown me away. So I just wanted to get that in there before I forgot.
Well, perhaps let's just lift the lid on internet marketing for a moment. And what most people do with their products is that they will release a product for the internet marketing crowd, for you guys out there. And then the next thing they'll do is, okay, what's the next product I can release for the internet marketing crowd? That's not how I'm approaching this. I want to make products that will sell to a wider market. I want to make products that will that can go on to, AppSumo in maybe a year's time and compete with those other AppSumo products that are top products from Silicon Valley companies. It needs to be that good. So what I'm doing with you guys is a testing ground for something which I want to be so much better later on. So I mean, that's my philosophy of creating anything really, but specifically these courses.
And what I really like about you as well is the fact that you don't have fake scarcity, because when you brought out the Webcam Advantage,
Yeah.
it was a steal. And the prices that we're even putting up to were still a bargain. But true to your word,
Webcam Advantage has got up 197 at the moment for the front end. And the idea was that eventually that would end up being a higher ticket product. So you can get Webcam Advantage as a bundle now for about $700.
Still a bargain.
It's still a bargain.
Yeah. What I'd like to say about that course as well, Steve, is that genuinely, and I'm not just saying this because you're on the show, genuinely, that is probably one of the best put together courses I've actually had the privilege of looking at in the last few years.
Well, thank you. That really does mean a lot. Thank you.
Now, and you know, I've obviously had the benefit of having a sneak peek at the new product,
sure.
And equally put together with the same professionalism, no doubt about that.
Thank you. That's it's what I tried to do. You have no idea about the amount of research that I've gone into doing this, because I started in comedy. I started as a writer, and then that tangentially moved me into doing radio. So I've had experience with recording audio for a long time. But then when you get to now I'm going to do a podcast and I'm going to do something broadcast. And what do you need to do at that point? There's a whole load of other things that you don't know that you don't know. Yeah. So there's an awful lot of research that's gone into making this product as well, sort of above and beyond this is a microphone and this is how you plug it into a computer, you know.
And there's one hack, there's one hack that I noticed in the new course in itself that will pay for the cost of the course alone, and that's just a microphone hack. I won't go into it here. All I'm going to say, the hint I'm going to say is pulsives. That's the only hint I'm giving there.
Plosives, yeah, okay.
Yeah. Was the thing that kind of struck my mind, and I'm thinking, wow, with that little hack that you've just brought two things together, you've saved people a couple of £100, maybe $300.
I don't mind talking about this because it is such a small part of the course. You know, but it's. I wonder if I put it down here somewhere.
This
will do to explain it.
Yeah.
This is a microphone. This is a cheap microphone. This is a condenser mic. This is a dynamic mic. Two different things. But again, I go through that in the course. So if you want to know more, get the course. So this is a condenser mic. It picks up absolutely everything. And if you speak right into there, the breath from your mouth hits the thing in there and it makes it go. You can hear it on loads of people's voices. This is a windshield. You put the windshield on the microphone, which is easier said than done. It's like putting a condom on
I know a little bit
an iron girder.
I know a little bit about this, Steve, from my singing.
Put condoms on, Tony.
Well, given the number of children,
I was going to say, I don't think you do, buddy.
Anyway, put it on so that it looks like that. And what happens is, as the air hits this, it disperses, so you don't get that sound. Now, there's a bit of microphone technique that you've got to play around with that as well. But on the whole, that's how you get a better sound with your mics straight off the bat. And one of the things that's things like the Blue Yeti, I know the Yeti is one of those microphones that a lot of business people got because for the time that it was released, and even up to now, really, it's a decent price and it gives you a fairly good audio.
That's what I'm using now, Steve.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're not in a room that has a lot of echo in it, then the Yeti will give you a very, very good sound.
Sure.
Pretty much consistently. I'm using a dynamic mic. This is the Shure MV7. And the only reason I've got it set up like this is because this is like the podcast setup for it.
Yeah.
You can use this near, or I can have it further away if I want to record videos with it. But this is a dynamic mic, which means that it has a lot more sound rejection. And so reflections that are coming back from the desk or they're coming back from the monitors in front of me, they don't have the same effect on the audio as they would do with a Blue Yeti.
Right.
Which means you get a cleaner sound, which means you get a nicer sound, which means you can have a fan on in the background and you don't hear it on the recording. It's a big change to a lot of people. But this is what broadcasters use, exactly because there can be odd sounds. I don't know if you can hear it right now, but there's a vacuum cleaner going on outside the room.
Nope.
I can't hear anything.
You can't hear it. You can't hear those extra little things because it's the microphone is set up for rejection, for that sort of sound rejection.
And I'm assuming
a conversation killer, wasn't it?
No. I'm assuming all this is explained in the course as well, Steve. Yeah.
Oh yeah. There's videos.
Well, one thing you touched on earlier about the growth of podcasts, against more traditional channels. Our show would typify what you were talking about there, because James, how much extra growth would you say we've had on our podcast compared to our YouTube channel? 20 times more?
Exponential. It's just unbelievable, and what I love about it is, as well, I'm a podcast user. I mean, like, when I go to bed at night, if I don't want to watch TV, I'll put a podcast on my phone, sitting on the nightstand. When it's charging, I'll put a podcast on. Anywhere, I'll put a podcast on. Radio's dead, guys. Radio is gone because it's full of crap adverts.
Well, that's really interesting, because one of the things that is baked into podcasts is the monetization side of it. There isn't a podcast out there that doesn't have some sort of in-stream ads.
Yeah,
almost like you get with radio.
But not as much. It's so frequent in radio.
No, not as much on that. But here's the thing. I've got a YouTube channel that I do photography on. I know you guys know about that because we talked about it before. Yeah. I've been doing it for a couple of years. I haven't done it for the last 6 months because I've been making products. But I've been doing it for a couple of years. It grew to 1,400 odd subscribers, which is still really good. That's still the top 1-2% of people don't get a YouTube channel over 1,000 subscribers.
Yeah.
So that's that's where it is. Although it's nowhere near the top YouTube channels, which are millions of subscribers, which you don't even think about. I can't monetize that. There is no way to monetize that. Because people, if I started saying, hey, why don't you go to Squarespace, people would be angry about that, because it's not the way they like to consume content on YouTube. And YouTube already puts those adverts up in stream at the beginning of the videos, at the end of videos as well. And that annoys people anyway. Largely, they can click through them. But the thing that they want you to deliver is that content. But if you know anything about getting, money from your channels and things, it's no good relying on the ad content from something like Google Ads on your website. You need to be able to put affiliate links and things in there as well.
Sure.
But you can't do that if you can't do those in-stream promotions as well. You're limiting yourself to the amount of money that you can make from your channel. Yeah. So because you can't do that on YouTube, that's a really limited earning potential, even if you get a video that suddenly has a few million views, because there's no links or you can put the links on there, but because there's no guarantee that you're pushing people towards those links, you can't do anything about it. Podcasts have this whole thing baked into them because people have been brought up on radio. They're brought up on radio and they understand that there's a bit of radio and then there's an advert. But with a podcast, you get maybe 2 adverts per hour. Yeah. Whereas with a radio station, you'll get 2 adverts every, 8 minutes, something like that, between every 3 songs, something like that.
Basically about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I think one of the great things about a podcast as well, Steve, is the ease of distribution.
Sure. Definitely.
To get on these top podcast marketplaces, if you want to call them that, platforms like Spotify, like Amazon Music, etc.
Yeah.
We literally set and forget on the platform we use.
Yeah, same here. That's it. Same here. But this is what I'm saying. That you've got this idea of monetization baked into your podcast. So right from day one, you can be saying to people, this podcast is sponsored by whatever it is, and there's a link in the show notes.
Yeah.
Right from day one. And nobody's going to complain, because that's how podcasts work.
Yeah.
And not only that, but the growth that you get in podcasts, like you guys have just said, is 10 times that what you get on YouTube. We did last year, and I think I told you about this before, we did a thing called Viral Murders, which was a murder mystery podcast where we had 12 episodes over 6 months, something like that. We'd one every other week. So about half a year's worth of content in this thing. After those 12 episodes were done, we had a list of about 1,000 people. Try putting 12 YouTube videos up and getting a list of 1,000 people. It's just
happen.
You wouldn't even consider it, would you?
No, not at all.
Not unless you ask Joe Rogan to promote it in his podcast.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
When I looked at our download figures for our podcast, I was genuinely shocked because we just didn't expect that number of downloads so quickly. I don't think you did, James, either, did you?
No, honestly, we didn't.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things why we were so excited when you said to us you were bringing out a podcast training course, because when we seen the quality of the webcam advantage, and we're more passionate. Now, guys, if you're watching our YouTube video, we're sorry about it, but we're more passionate about you guys listening on our podcast because we see how it's grown so well. You know, it's nice for you to see us high and all that kind of stuff, but ultimately, people that are listening to us on the road to work, on the tube, going into London or wherever you are on the planet, it's amazing. You know,
I think instantly, James, we were thinking, what golden nuggets can we pick up from Steve here? You know?
Bingo.
Well, we have a podcast that dropped last night called Murdering a Podcast. Now, what's happened since we did the Viral Murders, which was a murder mystery as a podcast, our company has kind of gone, well, look, COVID is still a bit of a problem for what we were doing, which was live murder mysteries. So we can't do that. What can we do which is connected with that? And we've got some ideas about digital products and stuff that we're working on. But along with that, as part of our marketing, so not as a product itself, but as part of our marketing, we wanted to produce more murder mystery things. And we wanted to do that as quick as possible, or at least with as little fuss as possible. So that gives us the biggest amount of time to work on the stuff that's actually going to bring money into the company. So what we decided to do is 2 of us are writing 2 series, 6 episodes in each series. And we're going to have 1 episode that goes out every month. And the first one is, I mean, all of this is still kind of baking at the moment. So, you know, the first one is the Kiltondale Case Files. So it's set now. It's got a murder mystery in it, and it's an ongoing kind of series. The second one is called The Amazing Adventures of Lord Peregrine Falconer, the Gentleman Psychic, and it's like a sort of takeoff of Sherlock Holmes. It's a comedy. I've got a comedy writing background, and so that's why I started doing that. And so that's what we're working on right now. Last night we released a podcast called Murdering a Podcast, which is the journey that Tash and I are taking to actually create those podcasts. So it's like a podcast about podcasting. Excellent. We have nothing out there. You know, we've got no other promotion other than going, this thing is happening. We put 3 episodes out last night. They have got collectively, I'm just looking at the figures here, 15 downloads between the whole thing. Nobody knew it was there.
Yeah, that's already
nobody was. Yeah, that is all organic growth.
And then obviously after you've now plugged that podcast, it's probably going to get a lot more hits now as well, because it's now, so it should be the podcast instead of Murdering the Podcast.
But and the thing about Murdering a Podcast is that everything that I'm teaching in Podcast Advantage was what we have used to get to where we are right now with Murdering a Podcast. And sure, it's not a lot of numbers on, well, it hasn't even been released for 24 hours yet. But that is organic growth right there. That is the start of building an audience right there. And we couldn't do that without the stuff that we've been working on in Podcast Advantage.
And you have to start somewhere with everything, Steve, don't you?
Exactly.
That's only going to grow and grow and grow from that point onwards, isn't it?
I mean, let's be honest. I mean, if you were starting a business tomorrow and you open the doors and you got 15 people through the door, that'd be a raving success.
I think you'd be pretty happy with that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I think we've established, guys, you know, podcasts, the potential is huge, the growth is there. Obviously, we've touched on quite a few things about your product, Steve. What would you say that the core product is? Could you tell us a bit more about that, please?
Well, the whole idea of it was to get, you know, we know the potential that podcasting has got. What don't people know right now that they need to know if they wanted to launch a podcast? Let's not say tomorrow, but let's say in a month's time. So, and I'm giving a month as a very specific time frame because it's a good idea to have a bit of lead time and before you actually launch your
preparation.
product.
Yeah,
that's what we've done. Now, just on that, we've had about 15 downloads from last night, but we've had 43 total downloads because I've had a trailer that's been out for a couple of weeks.
Right. Okay.
So that trailer's been there, kind of sat there, and that's really important because it takes a little bit of time for your podcast feed to get into Apple and to Spotify and to all of those places as well.
Yeah.
If you didn't know that and you'd planned your podcast launch on, let's say, next Tuesday, and you comes next Tuesday and you put your podcasts online and then you submit all of your feeds, you don't realize that actually you might be waiting around for a couple of weeks for those feeds to actually be put in there. So I wanted to add things like that in there to give people a path to actually getting their podcast online in the best way possible, to give it every single chance that it's
so
got.
it gives you a sort of warm-up period before you actually release your first episode.
Yeah. So this is what we
say, guys, as well. I mean, it's really important that if you're listening right now, that when Steve's saying a month, that sounds like a long time to a lot of people in the online market world.
Oh God, I wish it was.
Tomorrow is bullshit, guys. Listen, it's lies, and what Steve's giving you is absolutely solid foundations. Because if you say, yeah, I'm going to start a podcast, I'm going to do it tomorrow, you're going to make a rip-roaring mess of it. And then it's going to be on the floor, tanked within a week, and then it's on to the next venture, and then the next venture, and the next venture. What he's giving you
here's the thing. Look, if you wanted to write a successful blog, what do? Do you go out and actually start writing that day? No, you go and research the stuff first, and then you put it together as a blog. Let's take that and move on to YouTube. What do you do if you want to do a successful YouTube channel? Well, it's not just the research stuff that you've got to do. You've got to go out and film all the material. And then you've got to edit all of that material. The YouTube channels the YouTube videos that I was doing for a photography niche, so they have to look relatively good as well. The day one is me going out somewhere and taking the videos, which is basically me standing somewhere and taking a photo and showing people how I'm taking the photo. Day two is me editing that photo. Now, that's something that most people wouldn't have to do. So let's just take day two out, and let's say that you wouldn't do that for a normal vlog. But day two then would be editing. So you go back and you edit your video, and you can't just put the clips together. You've got to put the clips together in a way that is pleasing to your audience, and it takes time. I've spent probably a day and a half on some of the videos that I've put together. Some of them are easy because I've recorded them in a way that makes me able to put those things together. Some of them, take a while. I did a video on mise en scène, which is a film term that means sense of scene, and it means what you've got in your frame. But that took ages to put together, to find the clips, to do the research. 3 days I took on that video, just on the video alone. And then you've got to do all the other stuff. You've got to promote it on social media. You've got to make your thumbnail. You've got to, in many cases, you've got to split test your thumbnails if you really want to make it work. You're talking about 3 or 4 days of work to get one video onto YouTube.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, it takes me about 10% of my time. I do all the editing for those 2 IM guys.
Yeah.
I do the podcast and I do the video, and it takes me 10% of my time to do the podcast. It gives me 20% of the results, 20 times the results of the YouTube video. So sometimes I think in making this video,
what's the point making?
I think I
do all that. Yeah.
I think a good point to make as well, Steve, is that that time scale you just mentioned is you doing that, and you know what you're doing.
I've been editing videos for a very long time. If you're new to it, it'll take you a lot longer.
Yeah, exactly. For somebody that's not so familiar with the process, it could take them a lot longer, couldn't it? Yeah.
Podcasting, on the other hand, 2 audio feeds, get the balancing right, cut out the extraneous bits, and you're done.
Yeah.
I am convinced if you do, say, like a 20-minute podcast, some people do 20-minute podcasts. Many more do like an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours, but you can do 20-minute podcasts and have a good solid thing. I reckon you could do that in about an hour and a half to record it and edit it and stuff, because it's not the same workflow. And to me, that means that the podcasting is probably the best content marketing thing that you can do right now. You've got massive potential for growth. You've got very little, very low amount of competition in the field, no matter what niche you're in.
Yeah, and return on investment of time is incredible.
Yeah. And you can do it very, very quickly. But what Podcast Advantage lets you do is to get those things right beforehand, so that when you go back to I need to do this, and this to get my episode online, you are as set up to do that as humanly possible.
Yep.
And it's the same, and the quality of what you're teaching is going to give these people so much time saved in learning curve, all those mistakes that they're going to make. And with your background, the reality is they are going to be as professional as anybody else that's got a podcast. And
it certainly sounds to me like Podcast Advantage is going to give customers an A to Z, basically, Steve, of how to set everything up, isn't it? Basically,
it is the A to Z of how to launch your podcast. Yeah. And that's where I come on to then the upsell to this is a thing called Podcast Masterclass, where I go a bit further than that.
Yeah.
And I talk about the 4 ways that you can monetize, and then we do a really deep dive into one of those ways. And the reason that I've chosen that one way is because that is and I'm obviously not going to reveal that at the call. You've got to buy the thing, but that one way is the way that not only YouTubers but podcasters get the bulk of their money. If you want to actually become a professional podcaster, if that's your goal, and I would absolutely recommend people go down that path, whereas I wouldn't necessarily recommend people going, I want to be a professional YouTuber, because the barrier to entry is so much higher. But if you did want to go, okay, well, I'm going to do content marketing and I'm going to do a podcast, and that's going to be my job in, let's conservative estimate, a couple of years' time, then this one thing is the thing that you need to do to get the bulk of your money in. It is by far the best way of getting money for any endeavor that is creative in some way. So anyway, we do a big deep dive into that. And I also do a deep dive into the number one way that people get their podcasts found. A lot of people talk about,
which is super important at the end of the day.
Yeah. There's 2 things that you can do to kind of up the game in your podcast. I talk about one of them in Podcast Advantage, but the other one, and they're very connected as well, but the other one, I do a deep dive into what you need to do to be able to achieve that yourself. Because those were the things that I thought that's if you're at the end of Podcast Advantage and you want to go onto the masterclass, that's the thing that's going to grow what you do.
Yeah.
Steve,
so that's
sorry.
So no, go. I was going to say that's why that's important.
I was going to say, Steve, I know for a fact that I'm chomping at the bit. I think the listener will be like, hurry up and tell us about how much it's going to cost me and when can we get it, Steve? So tell us about the funnel and when is it going to be released? Because honestly, I know our people are going to love this. They're going to lap it up.
Okay, the deep discount, and it is a very deep discount, is going to be available from 10 a.m. EST on Friday the 20. What day is it now? 22nd. Yeah. I've been so engrossed in making a product, I don't know what day it is. That's how bad it's been. And that will go away on, is it Thursday the 28th?
Right.
So it's a 7-day launch.
7-day launch.
When the 28th. On the front end, Podcast Advantage, everything we've been talking about, go from A to Z of making a podcast to get your podcast online in the best way to take it forward to actually make a big splash with it. Podcast Masterclass takes you beyond that. It goes into the 4 ways that you can monetize this and how to do it. Like I said, the one big deep dive into I would nearly said it then into this one monetization thing that is the way of you actually making money long term with what you're doing. And we're going to go into the number one way that people are growing their podcast, and they're getting massive figures from growing their podcast like this as
Steve,
well.
During sorry to interrupt, during launch period, what the price points on the front end in that OTO one?
Price point on the front end is 37. On OTO 1, it's 67. On OTO 2, it's 197, I think. And then on OTO 3, it's 297.
Right, well, we'll confirm all the full funnel details and the pricing. And we'll make sure that they're below this video,
but I haven't told you about the best bit yet.
But we want to hear about the best bit.
Which is OTO 3 and 4. Sorry, 2 and One, two, and three. So OTO, one of the things I talk about in Podcast Advantage is you have to have a website. It's really important getting that website out there. It's a place for your affiliate links. It's a place for you to go and put your podcasts. OTO2 is a website that you can install on your server. I've built this as a web designer. I have built this with the way that I have actually built the Murdering a Podcast website as well. So you're getting very similar tech to what's in there. It's easy to install. I've got about 2 hours worth of video tuition with it as well that shows you how to install it. And this isn't just installing a WordPress thing and installing a template. It's all pretty much done for you. All you've got to do is change the colors. There's a video on how to do that. It'll change the colors site-wide. Change the fonts if you want to. There's a video on how to do that. It will change the fonts site-wide. Add in your own information. So there's about me sections. There's a contact thing. Yeah. Again, videos on how to do that. And then add in your podcast feed. And once you've gone through those videos of adding in your podcast feed, the website will update itself automatically every time you release a new episode.
Fantastic.
So at that point, you don't have to do anything else with that website. But if you do want to, it is built on the best technology that I can find. It's built on a thing called Oxygen Builder, which I absolutely love.
Yeah, I've heard good things about
it. I mean, it's not an easy thing to use. There's a bit of a learning curve, but it's so worth learning that because it makes your website really, really fast right out of the bat.
Yeah. So from the sounds of it, Steve. From the sounds of it, Steve, you've done 95% of the work for the user.
Well, yeah, pretty much.
And then it's down to them.
I'd say more than that because the last little bits of filling that in, of choosing your colors and things like that, that's a very personal thing.
So just personal branding and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And then the last one is a bundle of Webcam Advantage. So if you missed Webcam Advantage the first time round, you're going to get that whole bundle for $297, which is half price.
Yeah, that's huge.
Of what I actually usually do. Huge. Yeah, this is nearly back to launch pricing for that one.
I know you did, James, but I did after the Webcam Advantage launch. I know you were contacted by a few
loads of people.
A few of our subscribers. Yeah, I know I was by at least half a dozen saying, "Oh, we missed out on the price." And I just basically had to tell them politely, "I'm sorry, guys, but that's it. It's over." The pricing is what it is now, and that's what you'll need to pay.
Yeah, I mean, again, as you know, Tony, I run a mentoring group for affiliate marketers, and I said to them at the time, I said, "Listen, guys, this training that's just come out is without a doubt the benchmark that you should all be learning, and here is the link. Go buy it now before it goes horribly wrong."
Yeah,
and a lot of them didn't listen to me, and they come back weeks later. I said, "Listen, you need to go buy it full price now." I mean, as I say,
it is.
Sometimes when people see these kind of fake scarcity things all the time, they think everything's like that.
But this is the problem, James, isn't it? People get conditioned to the false scarcity, and it never happens.
Well, we were talking before we came on.
Steve is not one of those vendors.
When we were talking before we came on about that kind of the state of the industry and everything like that. And that is one of the things that you see all the time. People saying, "Oh, yeah, it's this price until after launch," and then after launch comes and it's still the same price, and a year later comes and it's still the same price. And I want to do things with my product. I think it's the big thing. And if you want to make your own products, I think this is a big takeaway. Actually, the big thing that happens in IM is people make a product and they think, "Okay, that's it. I've done it now. Now I move on to the next product." That product should be making you money a year down the line, 2 years down the line. And if you keep that product updated, it will do. And it will make a hell of a lot more money than the $7, $17, $27 price points that we normally see in IM.
I think it's fantastic that you're going down the quality over quantity route, to be honest with you. And that certainly is a reflection in your products for sure.
It's certainly one of the things that people have responded to most, I think, about the stuff that I put out. Actually, is
I mean, I both myself and James, Steve, we review a lot of products. I'm sad to say that the majority of them, it's a 5-minute review because instantly I see the issues with the particular products.
You can tell from the case sort of looking at a sales page for a minute. Okay, well, they're saying that it's this, so this is the system that they're using, and this is the piece of software that they put out, despite the fact that it's going to be hidden behind some of the language that they use. Then you know pretty much straight away what the product is.
Yeah, I mean, it's called sales copy for a reason, isn't it?
Yeah.
But one of the things that really blew me away, I mean, I came from a real business, conventional businesses in the real world.
James, what are you trying to say?
Well, I'm going to explain what I'm trying to say.
I use that same language because I used to make websites for local businesses. Sure, I know exactly what you mean.
So I'm a businessman. I've grew up with my father, who was an entrepreneur. I've been business orientated since I was a child, right?
Yeah.
And I came into this business, this affiliate marketing business, and I just didn't understand how these people's heads work, where they would spend a month or two building up a great big product that's with expensive sales copy, expensive website. And I was told, to my complete disbelief, that the product is the last part of the puzzle. It doesn't really matter about the product. As long as the sales copy is good and the website is converting, that's all that matters. And I was disgusted, genuinely disgusted, because everything should start with an incredible idea that is then built into an incredible product. And then your business model should then grow there because of the quality of what you're producing.
90%.
In an ideal world, I agree, James. Yeah.
And I think I understand why people say, the only thing that matters is the copy and whether the sales thing is converting. Because as a vendor, the people who buy your product aren't always your customers. No. As a vendor, your customers are the affiliates who are selling the product for you, which is, it seems crazy, but actually that's baked into an awful lot of different business models. Yeah. That actually, the people who you're selling to aren't actually the people who are the customers. And I don't like that idea at all.
I think the significant difference with myself and James, Steve, is that as affiliate marketers, we genuinely only want to promote quality products to our audience.
Sure.
Where there are other affiliates that is the last thing on their radar, isn't it? There's other factors.
Yeah. I know people have come to me and say, well, I can't promote your product because your price part's too small. And you think, well, then is that, if that's your only criteria for promoting a product in the first place, then what are your customers getting out of it?
I don't want you. It's crazy. But as I say, I mean, one thing you can rest assured is when Steve puts a product out there, this is technically what he's about to do, is just test the market with his brand new podcast advantage. And you are getting in there technically at a beta tester's costing, a small supplement, like a little donation for this process. Because when this goes out properly, I would genuinely put this together against Johnny Lee Dumas's product and say this is absolutely up there, on point, and I think, in my own opinion, better. But that's just my own opinion.
Yeah, James, I would say
that is an awfully good thing to hear, because it's what you kind of work towards when you're creating a product in the first place. Where is the value for people, and how do you then bring that across without it being too complicated and without it going too far into the tech stuff. I could spend out. One of the things that one of the reasons that I did this in the first place is because I saw so many channels on YouTube that were about podcasting, and all they talk about is the gear. And I bought this microphone because I love Shure.
Yeah.
And I can prove that. I've got like 7 or 8 different Shure mics sat around this room. I absolutely adore them. The Shure and Rode, I think, are the two best kind of not expensive but professional level mic companies.
Sennheiser used to be the one for me, Steve.
I was going to say Sennheiser was my main one.
Senn's are good, but they're expensive compared to some of the other stuff that's out there. And then the that kind of diminishing returns thing means you don't get a lot of. I can't see that. It's gone.
That's my thing. My background's going. It's the It's the Heil PR40 that Johnny Lee
I've heard good things about
those.
I've heard really good things about those.
Yeah, it's a good mic. I don't know if we're going to get it on screen because of the. No, it's not.
Doesn't look like
James, how many bloody microphones have you got?
I have got lots, mate. Obviously,
you do know you've only got one mouth, don't you?
Yeah, but it works so much more than many.
Well, this is the thing. I've seen all of these YouTube channels, And every single one of them is every month they're going, and this is the new mic, and this is a better mic than all of these other mics. And how does it hold up against the two mics that they always test it out against? The Shure SM7B, which is basically the broadcast microphone of choice in America, and the RE20, which is basically the broadcast microphone of choice in the other half of America. And in the UK, they do use those mics occasionally, but they're more likely to use SM7Bs. Again, when I worked with the BBC, there was an awful lot of SM7Bs and SM58s and things running around. But anyway, so the benchmark is always the RE20 or the SM7B. Those are mics that will cost you 400 quid. Those are mics that need another 100 quid's worth of extra tech before you put it into another audio interface that you've got to buy on top of that. Yeah. And the sound quality that you get from it is fantastic, but it's not markedly different from the microphone that I'm speaking into right now, the Shure MV7, which costs $200.
So they're more focusing on the hardware side of things and probably having a nice affiliate link below the video.
Well, yeah, they are. And that's the thing that interests them. That's the thing they're passionate about, is to take all of these microphones and test them and everything, which is fantastic. But it's not necessarily good if your thing at the end of the month is, I need to get a podcast out.
Yeah, and let's face it, Steve, as well, there's a lot of people on limited budget. They haven't got thousands of dollars to throw around, Yeah.
And with this, you'll be able to start for under $100. The first microphone that I recommend in it is for a budget setup, and it will cost you about 40 euros. No, well, yeah, about 40 euros from a German company, which I reveal in the thing. But does the job, and that it was the cheapest USB dynamic mic that I could find. It was good quality. So
yeah, I was going to say something there, guys. A lot of these courses rely on gear, and that saying, all the gear and no idea. You need training to put the gear into practice, and that's what Steve's bringing to the table today. And something that I genuinely want to say is, please, please, please don't underestimate the quality of this training because of the ridiculously low price it is at the moment. This will be the biggest mistake you ever make if you don't buy this at the launch price, because it is insane. And when you see the webcam advantage as well, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. It's incredible.
Yeah, no doubt at all, James, for the benefit of our viewers and listeners, that if any of them are thinking of starting a podcast now or in the near future, this is the product for you guys, because it's going to give you, a complete roadmap, an A to Z of how to go about setting everything up. And trust me, there's some amazing golden nuggets in there from Steve, because he really knows his stuff. Yeah,
absolutely. He's fanatical about what he does, and I love that about Steve, because he's now my go-to guy, because I let him do all that crazy mental research.
We'll be mithering him to death, won't we, James?
Yeah, stuff now. I'll tell you something else. If you think, podcast, that's not really the sort of thing for me, but you're in a kind of local business niche and you're selling to B2B and you're helping them with their content marketing, get this course, learn how to do it, and then teach that to your clients.
Yeah.
To your B2B clients, because they need this sort of thing as well.
Yeah.
Great advice. So, Steve, just to clarify, it's launching 10 a.m. EST.
10 a.m. EST, 22nd. Yeah.
And what platform is it launching on?
Warrior Plus and JV Zoo. I'm doing it on both.
Oh, you're doing it on both?
Well, I got to a point last time. I launched on Warrior, and that was fun. And then I launched on JV Zoo, and that was an experience. And I know the problem that I had when I was when I do, because I write Chris Hitman's emails. So I know the problem that I have when I'm looking at affiliate products is, but it's on this platform, but I don't want to promote on that platform. I know that that's come up several times, and I didn't want that to happen.
There's no doubt, Steve, that certain affiliates prefer a certain platform, don't they?
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, I completely get why you're doing a joint launch, if you like, on those two platforms.
Yeah.
In all fairness, though, I think one of the platforms that we're talking about does have an awful lot of rubbish promoted on it, so then everything tends to get tarred with the same brush.
I think they both do. It's just that they're rubbish in different levels.
Yeah.
And I think that there are plenty of people who won't buy from Zoo, and I completely understand why, because they've bought scammy stuff before and it just didn't work.
This is exactly, Steve, why we do this show, because we want to cut through all the BS for our audience And
it's what we try and do with Chris's
exactly.
list as well.
You know,
we try
all
and get the best products for people.
Exactly. That's what it's all about at the end of the day. We want to be telling our audience about the quality products that are launching out there.
Yeah.
And as well as the ones to avoid. Yeah.
Definitely.
Steve, thanks so much. It's been really good. But before we go, I've always got a question. I've asked you before, so I don't know if you'll have a different answer for me this time. But if you had to start all over again today with nothing but your laptop and $100 in your pocket to make money online, what would you advise our listeners and viewers to do?
Buy a mic and start a podcast.
And I agree with you. You know, genuinely, this is something that I know. And a lot of people, when they do come on, they do kind of spin it round to what their product is.
But you know what? I wouldn't have said that last time because, and I didn't say it last time, because we didn't have all the figures in for the Viral Murders. But it's seeing what the Viral Murders did. 12 episodes and 1,000 people on a list. That's ridiculous.
Yeah,
I was so shocked with that, which is why I went down this path in the first place.
Steve, when you look at it from our show, those two I Am guys, all we do is, you know, we obviously record the show in video format.
Yeah.
We then can, you know, take the audio part for the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I upload it, and we're getting 14 to 15,000 downloads a month for no extra effort.
Yes.
It's insane.
That shows the power of podcasts and the syndication of your podcast,
And see, I was going to say to you, Tony, about this time last year, we were talking about things and meeting up, right? This time last year, just meeting up, right? And I came down and met you in Devon, and we had a couple of coffees, and we blathered about affiliate marketing and the next thing.
We did,
and then when I came back, we then said, why don't we do a podcast together? We hadn't even done it a year ago to this time. We hadn't even started. We spent more time creating the logo. We had so much time spent creating the logo for the podcast before actually getting out there. And look at how far it's grown. It's insane.
Yeah. I just want to highlight to our viewers and listeners that what the numbers we're throwing around here are possible for you guys as well. Yeah. You know, we've been doing this, 8 months, James?
8 months.
The show, 8 months roughly.
Yeah,
and we're getting 14 to 15,000 downloads a month on our podcast. It's achievable, guys.
See, I think that's when we did Murdering a Podcast, it's a drama and it has a definite finish.
Yep.
And so there were only 12 episodes. And I think if you're running a podcast, that's a problem. You need to be consistent and you need to have something that's out there on a regular basis. Podcasts work like YouTube channels do, that people will find your historic content and will listen to that because they binge the whole thing.
Yep.
There are podcasts that have been out there for, I've done it myself. There's a thing called Critical Role, which is voice actors playing Dungeons and Dragons.
Okay.
They've been doing this for 7 years. Each one of their episodes is like 4 hours, 5 hours long.
Wow.
And I've listened to a good chunk of it because it's easy. You know, you listen to a podcast when you're in the car or when you stick it on when you have a shower or when you're doing something else and you just need a part of your mind distracted. A lot of people listen to them when they're doing the housework or something like that. And, you know,
I think another thing I think you're totally right, Steve. I think another thing to consider as well is that people digest content in different ways.
Yeah.
So to have an audio podcast version of your content is an absolute must these days.
It's odd, actually, that most people, you're right, people digest in different ways. People learn in different ways, but most people listen more than it. We all think of vision as our main sense because that's what we focus on. It's what we experience all the time.
Sure.
But actually, I think that audio or auditory senses are more important because they're more discerning.
Definitely.
That's why you can watch a video and the video quality doesn't have to be amazing, but if the audio quality is off, you won't watch the video.
Absolutely. And I've never downloaded an illegal movie that was taken in the cinema. Ever, honestly. I never did that.
But you wouldn't want to watch it if you had, right?
No, exactly, because the sound and the rustling and you hear the guy dipping into his popcorn, you know, you just can't.
You want the best experience, and so therefore you go, you wait till it's on Amazon Prime and you buy it on Amazon Prime. I bought Death on the Nile last night because
walking across the screen, James, with the ice cream.
Yeah. Hello, Mum. Hiya. Guys, this has been a great podcast. Thanks so much, Steve.
That's
really
a pleasure,
enjoyed it.
absolute pleasure.
But please, guys, don't underestimate the power of the PlayStation. Don't underestimate the power of the podcast. Honestly, this is insane. The opportunity is right now. The best time to get into podcasting was at the beginning, but really, I don't believe that, because
you know what? No, I'd say that this is still the beginning. We're not at that peak at the moment. We're nowhere near it.
Oh.
We've just got to a point where you've got Michelle Obama and Oprah Winfrey who have released podcasts. So this is the point where the big stars are coming in and going, we've got lots of money and we're releasing podcasts. And you know what? They're getting good download figures, but they're not doing substantially better than people who've just set up on their own and have built their own audience.
You know, awesome. And the reality, guys, when was the last time you sat down and read a full book, right? I bet many of you could say that you've listened to about 20 or 30 books on Audible. Podcasting and Audible are literally the same thing here. We're talking about, we're digesting content by sound. And it's
in fact, your podcast will be on Audible. Because if you submit to Amazon Music, it puts it on Audible.
Yeah.
So
it's all there. And I mean, how much credibility little Joe from down the street that's into vintage modified Ford cars talking about his podcast, and it's shown on iTunes. You can listen to it on iTunes, on Audible, blah blah blah. How many other different platforms do we have, Tony? You know, we've got
we syndicate out to about 15, 16 different platforms.
Yeah,
with one podcast,
all the main ones.
But Tony, I think only those basic ones: Apple, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, and Amazon.
Yeah, all the ones you've just said there, Steve, are all the ones that we syndicate out to.
Yeah, there are a bunch of others, but those are the ones that are the main. That's where your main audience is.
There's nothing nicer when you lift your own phone and you get into iTunes and into podcasts and you see your little video, your little picture up. Like, that's my podcast.
Yeah,
I done that. We done that. I love that. You know what I mean? It's so amazing. But Tony, the king of bonuses, I have a vision in my mind. I have a vision that when this release comes out, our people that we know, they love us and we love them.
Yeah,
we're going to give them something wonderful. Tony, have you anything in your sights right now?
James, we always give them something wonderful. So as usual, we're going to put together an amazing bonus package, guys. Below this video, there'll be a link to our bonus page. There'll be the full launch information on there, including the full funnel details and everything else, along with our bonus information. You do not want to miss out on this bonus, guys. So make sure you check that out. Yeah.
Awesome. So all that remains to be said is thank you so much, Steve, for your time. Always it's an education and it's always entertaining. So anybody else want to say anything before we go?
Just a big thanks to Steve for joining us again today. Been a pleasure as usual, Steve.
As always, yeah, it's an absolute pleasure. It really is.
Excellent.
And best of luck with your podcast Advantage launch.
Thank you.
And we'll certainly be supporting you, sir.
Yeah,
lovely.
Well, that's for sure, without a doubt. It's going to be amazing. And guys, don't mess about. Don't hang about. There's no false scarcity here. If you don't get it at the launch period, you're going to come crying to me, telling me, James, I needed to spend more money with Steve than I wanted to. Then take action. Okay. Thanks for listening.
James, sorry, just one thing. I mentioned the bonuses. In particular, there's one very, very special bonus. I'm not going to say any more than that. People are going to need to, click the link below the video and check out the bonus page for the information on that. Yeah.
Tony, you're such a tease.
I know. I love it.
Okay, guys, we look forward to speaking to you and hopefully listening to us soon here on another episode of Those Two IM Guys. See y'all later. Take care now. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.